In this video we're going to be talking about suicide and whether we can discover the social causes of suicide. So, suicide is regarded as the ultimate act of deviance, and there's a debate between positivist and interpretivist methods that can be used to produce valid analysis of society. So Durkheim studied suicide to show that society existed and social rules govern behaviour. He is a positivist and believed that society should be studied in a scientific way to discover social facts. Positivism sees science using mainly to use inductive methodology where you collect data, analyse the data, and then develop theories. However, many scientists now use a deductive method where you start with a hypothesis. For example, Popper believed that science was about falsificationism. So Durkheim used a comparative method and looked for correlations and causes. He found that suicide wasn't a personal issue. Suicide was greatly influenced by religion, location, age, and family, and social integration and regulation were very important. Durkheim believed that suicide can be categorized into altruistic, which is caused by over-integration into a social group, fatalistic, which is caused by over-regulation, egoistic, which is a lack of social integration, and anomic, which is a lack of regulation. So overall, Durkheim's study was useful because it's given us the ability to employ the comparative approach. He clearly identifies the causes and he gives us possible solutions such as increasing integration. However, Douglas has been criticised by the symbolic interactionist Douglas, who criticised Durkheim by arguing that a systematic bias may enter the process of reaching a decision. For example, if someone has well integrated friends and family, then they might be more likely to deny the possibility of suicide. Also, Douglas argued that the figures are the result of negotiation between the different parties. Also, Douglas argued that we can't treat all suicides the same, as we need to look at the individual's meaning, and we should be using case studies to find out more, and we should analyse suicide notes and diaries. However, Douglas didn't totally reject Durkheim, because he argued that if this bias is systematic, then it would be possible to allow for these distortions to produce more reliable statistics. Atkinson believed that social reality is a construct of its members, and we create reality using taken for granted knowledge. The real suicide rate does not exist as an objective reality. By operationalizing the concept, the sociologist is merely imposing their reality onto the social world. Atkinson had discussions with coroners, attended inquests, and observed a coroner's office of work and looked at the records of one coroner. He wanted to find out how deaths got categorized as suicide. His conclusion that it was the common sense of the coroners that was used to decide whether or not a suicide was classed as suicide, for example, a note. Atkinson argued that if we try to identify social reasons of suicide, we could just be making explicit the taken for granted assumptions of coroners. So, moreover, Taylor was a realist who developed a third approach by combining science and meaning. He argued Durkheim was a realist because social integration and regulation can't be directly observed but can be shown to exist. His work, Persons Under Train, showed personal history and statements by witnesses affect classification. Taylor believed that statistics are constructed, but Durkheim was right to look at wider social influences. So there's further evaluation points, such as Halbswachs, who believes that Durkheim overestimated the influence of religion, but generally supported his approach. And Batchelor argues that structural approaches are not very useful He developed Douglas's approach by categorizing terms of meanings. So, in conclusion, Hindes criticised Atkinson and phenomenology. He took the view that their work is no more than the interpretation of the sociologist, and so their work is theoretically worthless.